Excellent.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Technology for Good Hangout. This is episode 22. Guest on the show I have with me today is Dave Terrar. Dave, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi Tom. First, really appreciate being invited on. So, I'm David Terrar. I've been around in business for a long time and playing with social media stuff for about 10 years. Advise end customers and businesses on cloud and collaboration things with a company called D2C. And I've just launched a social business consultancy with two colleagues called Agile Elephant. So I'm intrigued by anything connected with social business and cloud technology.
And who would typical customers be, Dave?
It goes from, for example, one of my larger customers is the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. So that's the professional body that you'd be most likely to be a member of if you're an accountant in the UK.
And they've heard of social, have they?
Well, they since 2007, they've actually had an online community that connects together all of their members. They actually kind of collaborate in groups and they share. They blog. They have forums. They have wikis. They share content, and for a bunch of accountants, they're very forward thinking.
Wow.
So I think we've currently got just around about 88,000 of the 138,000 members playing around in that online community. So that's an example. So we've got customers like that down to a small printing company with 3 people that we help to find the correct cloud solution to run their business.
Excellent, very good. We'll get into the stories, Dave. Let me just call up the screen sharing app here and hit go. And the first story, as always, as we typically do, we start off with a climate-based story. And we saw, Dave, that the first story this week is about May, the month of May 2014 being the hottest May since records began. There's not much really beyond that, I think, to say, Dave, on this story. It was, every year and almost every month we're getting stories like this saying that, this month again has been the hottest since records began. It's we've had the hottest winters, we've had actually some of the coldest winters as well. The weather extremes are just kind of going off the charts. And according to this story, that says that 2014 is likely to be the hottest year on record given the El Nino that's coming in.
I find it fascinating because I'm an avid watcher of the news channels, and this had completely passed me by. I hadn't noticed at all. And we had some reasonable weather in the UK, but nothing special. But I hadn't sort of kind of taken a step back and thought about it from a global point of view. But we have a problem. We have to worry about it, and it's. I don't know quite what we do to get people to think more seriously about this topic.
Yeah, we had a reasonably cool May here in Seville. By Seville standards, and that really brings home to the difference between weather and climate, because we all felt it was a bit cool here, yeah. Whereas in fact globally it was the warmest May on record, as we know.
Yeah, which is amazing and worrying, and we absolutely need to get the message across to the average person in the street, rather than just the climate change enthusiasts.
Yeah, exactly. We'll move on. So the next story that I thought was interesting was this one, and it's around the fact that the UK and Germany, as the story says, the UK and Germany have had a kind of breakout year for solar power. The solar power records have been broken in both countries. In Germany, they had over 50% of their capacity come from solar at one point. It's much lower in the UK, for a number of reasons. UK has a lot of catching up to do, but still got a record of 7.8% of daytime electricity on the 21st of June, which was, 21st of June is the summer solstice solstice, obviously. So the longest day, the day with the most sunshine you imagine, or should be the most sunshine of the year. UK has doubled its capacity in the last year with 80,000 more installations, including several larger scale ones. There are now 530,000 installations in the UK. 510,000 of those are domestic small-scale ones, and as I say, about 8% of daytime electricity in total. Dave, when we were talking earlier, you were saying that you were getting a lot of phone calls from people trying to sell you solar.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of become a bit of a regular thing now. I mean, whereas you used to get a huge volume of calls of companies trying to sell you double glazing and conservatories, those sales teams have migrated to the sort of solar power thing, and it's. I mean, I get a remarkable number of calls every week. So there's obviously big government initiatives that those companies are capitalising on. And you can see it happening. I mean, around I live in St Albans, which is a town with I suppose 200,000 people, just a bit to the north of London. And as I drive around the area, I see a lot more houses that have got solar panels on the roof. So it's definitely a regular trend here in the UK, and that government initiative is pushing it on.
Interesting, and I mean that accounts for the 530,000. I guess a lot of those people who are getting those phone calls are saying, "Okay, sure, let's do it. Hook me up."
Yeah, well, I think the scheme kind of essentially means that you can for hardly any outlay have the installation put in, and then you pay for it over time with the savings that you're making from solar versus the normal national grid. So quite a creative scheme, being used by quite a number of solar installation outfits. But apart from the nuisance of the phone calls, it's a good thing. I used to for 5 years I was chairman of my local parish council here in St Albans, and one of the things we did was shifted the council to a carbon neutral approach, and we put solar panels on our on one of our community centres as a kind of like a showcase project. And back, I mean, this was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and the payback over time was quite considerable, quite a number of years. But I know the technology's got loads better in the last few years, so it's great that we're doing more of it.
Yeah, as you say, the technology is getting better and the cost is coming down as well. I think solar power has fallen somewhere between 20 and 30% year on year for the last 5 years in terms of price.
Yeah, which is great. This is great. So I haven't yet got solar panels on my roof, but it won't be too long.
Okay. We live in an apartment here, so I can't put solar panels up. We're moving to a house later on this year, so I'm hoping to then.
Hang one out the window.
Okay, we'll move on, and we're moving away from energy and renewables. And we saw in the kind of comms space, the communications space, this story coming out about an application called FireChat. And FireChat is it's a messaging app. It's a bit like WhatsApp or iMessage or any of these messaging apps, the typical messaging apps that everyone knows and loves. The difference with this one, though, is it can use protocols like Bluetooth, and it can set up mesh networks. So in places where there's no connectivity, for example, say you're in the underground, or you're at a conference where there's the Wi-Fi is just completely broken down, you can still use this to communicate. Now, it's not a broadcast thing, it's not like Twitter, but you can do one-to-one communications or group communications using FireChat. And this story is showing up one of the more negative sides of it, I guess, because it's showing that it's being used heavily in Iraq when the government are trying to shut down internet access. And the government there are trying to shut down internet access because the internet's being used by this rebel group, ISIS, who are perpetrating some pretty horrendous atrocities there. But so, the fact that it's being used by them isn't really the best showcase use of the application. But it is, from what I've seen, it does seem to be a very useful application as long as you're not trying to subvert your local government.
I mean, I'd actually kind of like heard of FireChat and not actually had a chance to explore what it was. So I was grateful to be pointed to the story and fascinated by what it does. And yeah, it's a shame that that's a kind of a negative use of the technology. But it seems like a really brilliant thing. And the idea of connecting everyone's Wi-Fi hotspots together to communicate, that's got to be good. And I realise how kind of popular group messaging type applications are these days. So I mean, yeah, I think it's great, and there's lots of potential for that.
And one of the really cool things about it, Dave, I don't know if you spotted this, but like I say, it sets up a mesh network, and you can kind of daisy chain users. But if even one user in the chain does have internet access, that can then be shared back along the chain to everyone in the group.
Which I saw that, and I think that's awesome. I mean, that is really good. Yeah, I mean, I can see, just before the show, we were talking about how at so many conferences that are technology oriented, the Wi-Fi connectivity is so often rubbish, and so using things like this to kind of supplement it and actually have a decent back channel going has got to be good. But yeah, that idea, so that it all connects together and then gets you out to the internet somewhere, is just fantastic. I mean, and it's the kind of thing where it's good in for the kind of more advanced world that we live in, but you can imagine in third world countries where the connectivity is just nothing compared to what we're used to in the big cities. That's got to be a real value.
Absolutely.
Anyone who's gone and done business in Africa, will kind of recognise that the mobile phone is so crucial, and actual normal conventional internet connectivity and having the electricity on is much less likely, I'm afraid, than we're used to.
Yeah. But no, the dropping price of solar should help with the electricity there, and we'll probably touch later on in the shows. We have a lot of Google news to get through today. We'll probably touch on the I think it's called Android One, which is going to be the new version of Android for developing countries. So.
Yes, so cut down low cost smartphone version.
Exactly. So hopefully those two things will help the developing world a hell of a lot. But we haven't got to that yet. We'll move on to the next story that I came across, which I thought was interesting, and it was around the Twitter and Twitter experimenting with a new way to retweet. And it kind of one of the big problems when you try and do an RT type retweet in Twitter is that you very quickly run out of characters, so it's very hard to add your own kind of comment into the retweet. But with this, what we can see it here on the screen. You have this retweet with comment option, and it's kind of the thing that Twitter are rolling out to a few users at the moment as a trial run. I had to check my own phone, and unfortunately it's not on my phone just yet, but they're rolling it out on a trial basis, and when you hit the retweet with comment option, what you get is something like this one here, where you have your comment up here at the top and the original tweet is down here underneath it. So the original tweet appears kind of like a card with your comment on top of it. So, it has always been an issue with Twitter that you run out of space very quickly. So I think this is awesome, and I think the sooner they roll this out to everyone, the better.
Completely agree, Tom. I mean, one of the beauties of Twitter is 140 characters means you have to kind of think about communicating in a different way. But of course, it's the weakness as well. I jumped onto Twitter on February the 14th, 2007. So I was in the kind of early advanced guard and managed to get a 2-character kind of Twitter ID.
Twitter handle, yeah.
That Twitter handle, my Twitter handle is DT. Which is my kind of nickname anyway, so that's why I wanted DT. But part of the rationale for sticking with that was real estate so that you could actually fit more into a tweet. And when you're doing an RT and you're trying to kind of somehow edit some of the words out so you can at least say 3 or 4 words in response. Yes, it's about time. This is a great. They need, and can I have it tomorrow, please?
Exactly. And you were February 07. I think I was February 07 as well.
Yeah. Well, you see, I think there was a wave of us jumping on, and actually, of course, in March 2007 was South by Southwest, where they used Twitter as the batch. So right. you and I were just ahead of the big wave of social media kind of people that jumped on after South by Southwest, March 2007, and it was only.
Trendsetters, Dave. We're trendsetters.
Yeah, of course we are. Yeah, it only became a company in its own right in September of 2007, so we were definitely advance guard.
Oh, tremendous! Well done. Well done you. Well done me. pat ourselves on the back there. Sticking with communications, and I saw this one that Microsoft are bringing out a new Nokia X2 handset, and unusually, I guess, given that Microsoft have their own Windows mobile operating system, this Microsoft handset will be an Android handset and not a Windows mobile handset. Now, I'm not quite sure what the rationale for this is. I mean, the speculation is that they want to keep people who are loyal to Android, but using but like the Nokia handsets, keep them on board and have them still come on and use the Microsoft cloud services. So at least they're getting that and the money for the handset off them. I'm not sure. What's your take on this, Dave? I mean, it's an interesting one to be sure.
Well, I think it's kind of. I wondered what was going to happen when taken over by Microsoft. Would they just focus on the Windows operating system and drop the Android? So I think it's good. Probably in their position, I would do the same and have 2 streams to my business. And kind of, like you say, recognise the fact that I just want my customers to have mobile access to the cloud services. I actually think that Microsoft, 2-3 years ago, I wasn't particularly impressed with Microsoft's cloud strategy, but today I think they have a really great cloud strategy, and everything they're doing with Office 365 and the like. I'm very impressed by, and it's good to see a big company like Microsoft actually, changing and doing things a bit more differently and the like. So yeah, it's for me it's a good move. I'm kind of intrigued, and this isn't to appear to be a kind of an anti-Android platform kind of a thing. One of the complications that anyone in mobile has got is that when you actually look at the mobile usage, like I saw some stats for the May usage of Wikipedia by device, and I think that from memory the percentages were something like, it was like 55% was sort of the aggregate desktop use, with sort of 40-something% Windows, 5% Mac, 5% others including Linux, and then 40-something, close to 50% was mobile usage. But wow. Interestingly, 25% was iOS on iPhone. Something like 10 or 15% was iOS on iPad. And Android was, I don't know, something like 9 or 10%. I'll send you the slide. And then sort of the Windows mobile was kind of like in a 5% of other. But so interestingly, one of the complications with Android is that the actual web usage it isn't quite as high as with the iOS device, and I wonder why that is. Right? Is that to do with the browsing experience not being as good as on the iOS, or is it because people are using more apps and these figures don't cover the app usage? But however, the world's going mobile whether you like it or not, and it's not going to be too long before that kind of usage of that kind of web usage is going to be over the 50% compared to the old desktops that used to.
True, true. We saw the same thing with the usage of Facebook as well. It's now well over 50% from mobile devices on Facebook. But what was interesting, I saw a headline as well during the week. I didn't click through and read the story, but I saw a headline during the week saying that even though Android devices make up, I don't know, is it 70 or 80% of the mobile devices now, that still the amount of income from applications is still higher from iOS devices than it is from Android devices. Even though they've got almost twice as many users, it's still much higher income from the iOS apps, which is so. To your point, people who have iOS devices spend more money on applications and use the browser more.
Just as a little aside, I was listening to the CIO of William Hill, the betting company, who have a very interesting. I mean, for an old established, I can't remember how old they are, but they're like 100 years old. They're going for a very interesting mobile first strategy, and they've reorganized their company completely. And all of their IT. I mean, they're talking about putting mobile apps out in a kind of like a 4 to 6 week time frame, checking out whether they work, and then moving on to the next project. They've reorganised the way the company works completely. Really fascinating. But one of the things that they're God, I've forgotten his name. Finbar, forgotten your name, your last name, Finbar. I do apologise, but William Hill CIO said that in their kind of mobile apps, the iOS users spend 3 times more than the Android users.
Wow.
So they're obviously more willing. They spend more, and they're more willing to take risks as well. Isn't that interesting?
It's fascinating. That is fascinating. Wow. You were talking about Microsoft and their cloud strategies and how they've improved over the last couple of years. You're absolutely right. I mean, their cloud strategy has come on leaps and bounds in the last few years. But something you may be unaware of is the fact that the Microsoft are the second largest purchaser of renewable energy in the US. The largest purchaser of renewable energy in the US is Intel. Microsoft are number 2, and they use that primarily for powering their buildings, facilities, and data centers. So the cloud facilities they have in the US are powered right now 80% by renewables and 20% by offsets. So they're 100% renewable, just 20% is by offsets, and 80% is directly from renewable energy. And they say that by the end of 2014, it'll be 100% by renewables and no offsets. So their cloud is about as green as you're going to get. If you're looking for a green cloud solution, you've got the company called Green Cloud, which are based out of Iceland, so they're 100% green. 100% renewable, and you've got Microsoft, who are also extremely green, and by the end of this year, they say they will be 100% from renewables as well. So, if that kind of thing is something that you are interested in chasing, the Microsoft and the Green Cloud solutions are impressively green.
That's really good, and it obviously makes business sense too. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. That's great.
Exactly. We'll go on to the next story, and it is around Google, and this is the start of the kind of Google portion of today's show. Google had their big I/O conference this week, so there was a lot of news coming out of Google. And the first one, and I even had a few Google stories lined up before the I/O event, and this is one of them. So the next couple of stories aren't from the I/O event, but they are Google related. So this first one is around Google testing a domain name service. So the domain name service that a lot of people would be aware of is one called GoDaddy, for various reasons. It's quite a controversial company, but up until now, Google haven't gotten into the fray in domain name service, so you couldn't go to Google and buy a domain and get it hosted and that kind of thing. But now Google are testing the ability to do that. I mean, they've had the ability to do it for a while, but they're testing commercializing it now. So I guess it makes a bit of sense, Dave. Would you buy a domain from Google?
Well, It's an interesting thing, and obviously, GoDaddy are spending a huge amount of money on TV advertising over here, and obviously they did the same in the States when they started, and had some of the most creative adverts around the Super Bowl to kind of promote their wares.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, I've got a particular provider that I've always used for domains, and I'd probably just keep going back to them. But it's a convenience thing. So I think it makes perfect sense for Google to go into this kind of thing, and a lot of the time you're going to want to like a one-stop. If you're a small business, you don't want to have to worry about all this stuff. So if you can get a one-stop shop for all of my creating my website and getting the domain and getting my cloud services to run my business and all those things together makes perfect business sense to put it all together. So I can understand why they're doing that.
One of the things I did notice about this story, and it could be a differentiator for Google. One of the things was that they say that with this Google service, that if you want a private domain, as in if you don't want your details made public for the domain that you buy, most domain providers, you have to pay extra for that. Yes. But with Google, they say they're going to not charge extra for it. So I guess that would be an interesting one.
Google promoting privacy. Now there's a
there's a first.
That's impressive, yeah. But fascinating. But I mean, yeah, I can understand why they're doing it. It's and obviously it's a big thing at the moment, particularly with all of with the opening up of the new third level domains. It's a big thing at the moment, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and sticking with Google, Google have, well, they put their Google Glass devices on sale in the US a couple of weeks ago, on general sale, and just this week they've announced that now on sale as well in the UK for about £1,000. Are you going to be rushing it, Dave, to get yourself some Google Glass?
I don't think so. Just before I forget, by the way, I've remembered that the William Hill CTO is called Finbar Joy. So sorry, Finbar, forgot your name, but really good guy. Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by the Google Glass thing. But £1,000 for the device, and I guess it's going to be the developers who are prototyping stuff, and I suppose eventually the price is going to come down to become more affordable. I can see dozens or hundreds of kind of business applications for that kind of technology.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. I mean, I've seen there's applications for it in all kinds of walks of life. I mean, the New York police force are trialing it, for example. I've seen doctors in hospitals trialing it. You can imagine field service engineers out looking at machinery, getting an augmented reality version of a blowout of the parts of the machine they're supposed to be servicing, and the ability to take a geostamped photograph of the job when it's done. All these kind of things that will make the processes, the business processes of doing these kinds of things far faster and far more streamlined. So there's all those kinds of uses of it, definitely. Robert Scoble had a great expression that he used to use. It was the early adopter tax. And I think anyone who's paying £1,000 or however many hundred, or however many, I think it's about $1,600 in the US or £1,000 in the UK, anyone who's paying that kind of money is definitely paying the early adopter tax. When this goes on general release worldwide, it'll be down around €200 to €300, I'm guessing. There's no way it's going to be up around 1,000. No one's going to buy it at that. But even at that, I have a hard time seeing myself walking down the street ever wearing a set of Google Glass.
No, I'm with you, Tom. I actually think that from a regular consumer point of view, I just don't particularly see us getting into the habit of wearing those things. But the sort of hands-free kind of business use and for all sorts of medical and other applications, I think we're going to see a huge explosion of ways that could be used.
Yeah, Yeah, we'll plow on, and the next, again, as I said, Google-related story. Again, this one came out before the I/O event, and this was around Nest. And Nest was this thermostat company who are now doing smoke detectors as well, that Google bought for, I think it was 3 billion, 3.1 or 2 billion, a few months back. So the Nest thermostat is now, the company are now opening their developer program. They're opening up APIs for developers around these Nest devices, around the smoke detector and around the thermostat. And this is interesting because for me, this seems to be Google and Nest's way of getting deeply into the smart home and that whole ecosystem. So Apple have brought out their HomeKit, which is their play in this field, and now Google, with the purchase of Nest, they've got the hardware, and with this opening up of the platform and the APIs, they're generating for themselves the platform for this as well.
Yeah, I think this whole thing is, this whole area is fascinating, and obviously, we've been talking Internet of Things for a few years now, and then companies like Salesforce, Mark Benioff jumps on and starts talking about the Internet of Customers, and in the last couple of
with his toothbrush.
Yes, yeah, all that stuff, and I think, when was it, maybe at least 2 years ago, in his kind of in the big presentation, had lots of the connected car and the connected Coke machine and all sorts of stuff. So I absolutely think we're just on the edge of what there is, what's going to happen. I mean, it's huge potential. So yeah, it's perfectly logical that that Google with their platform and Apple with their platform are making advances. And I think that there are some fascinating opportunities, both for the connecting of devices, but also the data that we'll collect as a byproduct of what we're doing.
So this is a kind of an area that I've been looking into for quite a number of years now, because it all plays into the kind of smart grid as well. And smart grid is stuff that I've been kind of talking about and writing about and giving speeches about since 2006 or so, back when I was getting into data center development as well. The two kind of things kind of hooked up. And it's all about energy management. So the Internet of Things can be extremely useful for that kind of thing. And when I was talking about it back around 2006, 2008, kind of 2010, those kind of time frames, the Internet of Things hadn't been kind of the technology wasn't there yet, but the vision was, and the vision was that to bring more renewables onto an electricity grid. When you do that, you start to bring instability into the grid, because you're getting variable energy providers coming onto a stable system. And the variable energy providers, the variability is around when the sun comes up, when clouds go by, when the wind blows. So you're getting instability in the generation. And of course, an electricity grid has to be stable the whole time, or you get brownouts and blackouts. So what you got to try and do is you got to try and match up the demand with the supply, and it's demand management, a classical demand management scenario. And the best way to manage the demand in that kind of thing is to kind of publish real-time pricing. And if you can have smart devices, be it your fridges, be it your immersions, be it your washing machines, whatever, if those devices, or your electric vehicle, if those devices can be listening out for published real-time pricing, they can adjust their behavior depending on the pricing at any point in time. I mean, for example, with a clothes dryer or a dishwasher, if you put it on at 7 o'clock in the evening, you don't care when it's finished, as long as it's finished by 7 o'clock the following morning. So it's got a 12-hour window in which to do your stuff. And similarly with charging a car or any of these kind of things, you've got loads that are movable. Yeah. You come home, you want to put on your dinner, you're going to put that on at 7 or 6 or whatever time you normally have it. That's not a movable load. But there are other loads in the house that are eminently movable. And if you then can match demand with supply, that stabilizes the grid and allows you to bring far more variable generators onto the system. So uh, seeing that kind of vision, which was very much in the realms of science fiction, if you want, back around 2008, seeing that now actually become tangible. Now that we're in 2014 with these kind of technologies, it's really great. I'm massively enthusiastic about this because of that. I can see the smart grid really starting to become a thing now because of this Internet of Things. So it's for me, I'm wildly enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, I totally.
Probably unhealthily so.
No, enthusiasm is marvelous, but no, I mean, huge potential, and obviously, many years ago, if I mean, only UK people who are of a certain age would understand the phrase, me saying economy 7 on steroids. That we used to have a kind of a thing where you could actually have a special electricity kind of supply where if you used storage radiators and actually use the electricity at night, it was cheaper. So the idea of taking that concept and actually doing it in the incredibly clever way that you're talking about, just brilliant. Yeah. So loads of potential for not just the energy efficiency things, but the other things that we'll be able to discover and do out of the data that we'll be collecting from these devices is quite mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. So onto, I mentioned the Google I/O conference, and excuse me, it was a big event. They had a lot to announce, and we're not going to go through all the announcements. We'll touch on a couple of them. But there's this article, and the links to all these will be on the website, on the Greenmonk website when I publish this, and also on the event, the Google event for this Hangout. This particular article from Wired goes through in a lot of detail. And the title of the article is "Everything You Need to Know About Google's I/O Keynote," and it goes through everything that was gone through in the event. You've got the talk about Android L, which is the version 5 of Android, the one that's coming in August or September, thereabouts, that kind of ballpark. And it goes through what's going to be different about that. Also, as well as that, it goes into mobile Chrome. It goes into, and I'm scrolling down through it here quickly, Android Wear, and that's the version of Android that has been specifically developed for smart watches, small devices like that. And then it goes into, and they showed some of the watches, it goes into Android Auto, and we'll have a quick chat about that in a sec, Dave. The Android Auto is an interesting one because it's Android for the car and the connected car, and the way they've rolled that out is quite clever. You've got Android TV. You've got Android basically everywhere. You've also got Drive for Google Drive for Business coming out as well. So lots of cloud services, and basically there was an enormous amount of things announced during the event. It's hard to know where to start, Dave.
It's all fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're seeing very much the rise of two different ways of life. If life platforms, you've got iOS and Android. I mean, you mentioned yourself, Windows is in around single-digit percentages, and BlackBerry we can forget about. There are really just two players. There's Android and there's iOS, and they're both making big plays for everything. For the car, you've got CarPlay on iOS, and you've got Android Auto for the Android system. You've got Apple TV, and you've got Android TV. You've got, as we mentioned, these smart home things. So HomeKit on iOS and the Nest platform that's being rolled out on the Android side. You've got the tablets, you've got the there isn't an equivalent Chromebook on iOS, but you've got the MacBook Air, which is pretty close in terms of weight anyway, if not in terms of services to a Chromebook. They just want to be everywhere, Dave. One question. So we're seeing as well the two of them are getting into health with Google Fit and Health Kit and the Health app on iOS. This is a question that struck me last week, and I asked a couple of people, and everyone kind of hummed and hawed on this one. So I'll put it to you as well, Dave. Your health information, if you're going to put it on a device and have it held in a cloud, would you trust Apple or Google with that information? Who would you trust more?
It's a good question. And actually, the trust thing is obviously really important. And I think part of anyone who's involved with working with cloud services, trust and security are often the most biggest, the largest and most emotive issues. And obviously, you and I come from a background where we maybe have a different attitude towards security compared to our kids, and the millennials are growing up, with a completely different attitude towards their personal data and the way it is or isn't exposed and stored. So I think it's a big issue. I think from my point of view, maybe my bias might be to trust an Apple more than a Google, but actually, a really good analyst in this kind of mobile world that intersects with cloud stuff is Benedict Evans, who I can't remember the name of the firm that he works for in the States now, but he used to Zenders that he used to work for over here. He talks about the four horsemen, and so as well as Google and Apple, he talks about Amazon and Facebook in this context. And yeah, they're all vying for our attention in the market and the products in different ways with different characteristics. But there are big plays to be made, and so it's perfectly logical that they're all extending their reach in different ways. For me, one of the beauties of the cloud concept is that I can do my thing, whatever it is, and I can build whatever it is I'm building on somebody else's world-class technology. So yeah. I don't have to be an expert on security because I can rent the expertise from somebody else. So for me, I would argue that cloud-based solutions are inherently more secure than doing it myself.
Sure. Sure. And you know yourself, Dave, that if you're using Gmail, Google is scanning your email and presenting you with related ads. Is the same going to happen to the health information you put into Google? Because you know damn well that if anyone ever found out that Apple was scanning your health information, they would their reputation would collapse overnight. Because that's not their business.
You raise a very important point, Tom, in that there is this whole scenario where you're right. Google, we've got an environment where Google has been scanning and using our data in those kinds of ways without us really noticing it. And even though it's our own fault because we were the person who clicked tick on the terms and conditions and hit enter and didn't actually read them all and go to a lawyer and get legal advice. We just we kind of plow on because it's a free service and great, and you kind of have the notion that if the service is free, you need to understand that suddenly you have become the product. Yeah. And they're making money from your use of that product. So that's a given. But when it comes to health data, I guess if they are going to be storing lots of health data, that has to be addressed in a different way, and they have to use a different modus operandi than they do with Gmail. And I guess for me, I'm going to maybe emotionally I would trust an Apple more than a Google, but in reality, either of those guys could do a perfectly sensible job. And,
Yeah.
and,
And to be honest, I think the functionality it gives is going to be phenomenal because I've got, I've lived in Ireland, I've lived in the UK, I've lived in the US, and now I'm living in Spain. And I've got little bits of health information that have kind of dropped here and there through the years, and God knows where they are now. And trying to assemble them now, if I had to, would be a nightmare. Whereas if I had them electronically on a device or in the cloud, accessible on a device, it would make far more sense. It would just be, I'd have as I called it last week when I was talking with Gary Barnett, a health vault, a vault of my health information. And if I could, assign permissions to it, that, this doctor can see it today and that doctor can see it tomorrow, or this health worker or whatever, that would be fantastic. That would be ideal. I mean, I was out the other night, 2 nights ago, getting an MRI on my ankle because I have a bit of a bum ankle at the moment. You can see I'm still in the crutches here. And when I get that MRI, I'll be getting that probably this evening. I'll go and pick it up, and I'll be getting it big, acetate sheets. I'd love to get it electronically, and be able to store it electronically. And in fact, what I did the last time I got one was I held it up to the light and took a photograph of it at the phone, and then I had an electronic version of it. But that's crazy. That's crazy. The people who take it should be able to send me an electronic version of it, which I can then share with. I can have it in a vault somewhere, and I can share it with whoever it needs to be shared with.
Everything you say there is brilliant. And there are two things that I want to add to it. The first is that the shame of it is that very few countries handle the health records and the way that people's health records are stored kind of in a sensible and there's so much money our NHS in the UK has wasted on trying to put together a good system. And I know that in certain countries like Estonia they're doing a much better job than we are. But however, to get to the wonderful nirvana that you just described, that's where we need to get to. But the other thing I think is even more important and has even more potential is the possibility of your health data and my health data anonymized, and then some sort of big data application that actually looks across at the health trends and actually gets out more information by aggregating all of our different health problems, and actually comes up with solutions that wouldn't be possible without actually storing it all collectively in one place up in the cloud.
Yeah. They have a good health system here in Spain, it has to be said. So, for example, that's my health card. And you saw it has a little chip in it. So I go to the doctor, I hand him the card, he sticks it into the card reader on his computer. It gives him all my records. He then, gives me a prescription for some medication if I need it. I get the card back, I walk into the pharmacy, I hand them the card. They see their slice of the information, which is just basically the prescription that I need, and the fact and who has prescribed it to me. And then they can give me that medication, and I'm sure I'm getting the right dose, I'm sure I'm getting the right medication. There's no issue with doctors writing. Their handwriting problems, nothing like that, and it's all there, and it's all held in a record. I don't have access to it myself, as in I can't stick it into a computer and see my records. But I presume something like that will come. I'm sure there'll be a smartphone accessible version of it in time as well. They've done. It seems to be a quite good job here so far, and I've no doubt it'll get better.
Excellent. Hadn't realised Spain was so advanced with that, and that's fantastic. Which we need to catch up.
We'll move on, and staying kind of in the health space, we've got these smart watches. Now, these ones are absolutely gorgeous, I have to say. These ones are from this French company called Withings, and Withings make a wireless scales as well, bathroom scales. And they connect up. They connect up to an application that you have on your phone, for monitoring your weight, your activity, your sleep, your heart, all these kind of things. So it's a nice little system. And presumably in time as well, when the iOS 8 ships, you'll be able to drop this information into the health application on the iOS as well. And in the same kind of vein, excuse me, Motorola showed off at the Google I/O event their Moto 360 smartwatch. And it's a beautiful looking smartwatch. It's got the round face with the hands on it, but also it shows up screens like this. So you've got kind of an OLED overlay. So you can see this is the Android Wear running on the Moto 360. So you get your notifications coming up on your hand. This one is for flight information. This one to tell you to open something on the phone. This one with your flight information with the hands of the clock there as well. And you've got various other things like that. You were saying a little earlier, Dave, you're a little skeptical about these devices, about the smartwatches. I understand that, I do. But just tell me from your own perspective where the skepticism lies.
Well, those two products are probably the smartest in the other sense examples I've seen. In that so many of the kind of the smartwatch things that have come out now kind of remind me of some while back when we had calculator watches, and there was a subset of geeks that had kind of calculator watches, and I get the feeling that the same subset of geeks will be having the latest Android watch or Apple iWatch on their wrist, and I find it difficult to think that these are going to break into the kind of like the watch fashion industry and get people like me to give up the Tag Heuer Formula One watch for some technology when I've already got my smartphone in my pocket, and so a lot of what can be done I can already do with a device that I've got in the pocket. So on the one hand I'm kind of concerned on that respect, on that side of things, whereas because they're fashion items. And
yeah, I can see that, but a conversation I had with Chris Adams a few weeks back about this. We talked about the move from fob watches to wristwatches.
Ah, yes.
And when you had a fob watch, you had the time in your pocket. You pull it out of your pocket, you press a button, the face would open up, and you'd see the time.
Yeah.
And then you had a shift of paradigm from the fob watch to the wristwatch. So you no longer have to put your hand in your pocket, pull out the watch, press the button, open the face, to now you just glance at your wrist. And we're now going to start to see, I think, a similar shift from taking the device out of your pocket, pressing the button to light up the screen, to one where the information is just on your wrist. You just flick your wrist and look at it. Now, in my own case, I've not worn a watch in, I think it was 98 was when I stopped wearing a watch, because I had a phone in my pocket with the time all the time. It was actually closer to 96. I think it was very early. But recently, since I had the operation, I got one of these devices because I wanted to use it to monitor the recuperation and see how many steps I was doing on a weekly and monthly basis. And it's starting to go the right direction, thankfully. But I can see now that has gotten me a little more interested in monitoring health information. And a lot of these smartwatches, as well as having the built-in notifications, also have a lot of this thing about monitoring heartbeat, monitoring steps, monitoring sleep patterns, all those kind of things as well. So I can see both the convenience of just a quick glance at, or reply to and say, and bang, off it goes without having to put your hand in your pocket at all. I can see that actually being a compelling reason for getting one of these devices.
Right, two things. The first is I believe in the Darwin's theory of evolution, and so the Swiss Army knife concept actually doesn't work. In my bag, I have a laptop computer, I have an iPad, I have a digital. I mean, we see, but you've
I've,
but you
I've,
put it as
I've
a
got
fashion thing. How many of those things do you actually use? I've got one of those as well. You've got £15 one, the champion. You've got a Swiss stamp, just like I've got. But it's a fashion thing. I don't use. I've half of those things I've never actually taken out. But in my bag, I've got. So I've got a phone. I've got a digital camera. I've got a digital recorder. I've got an iPad. I've got a laptop computer. Um, so basically, this convergence thing has kind of worked a bit with the iPhone, where the iPhone has actually brought together a kind of a sensible package of things that we can do together because of the integration of taking photographs and putting that direct into emails and tweets and the like. So that's a bit where it works, but in general it doesn't. So this thing's a watch. I think the idea of health kind of checking is great, and therefore the idea of Fitbits and other devices to do that, or doing it from a phone. Absolutely agree with the concept of doing it. I'm just not sure doing it on the watch is the best way. And so that's thing number one. So I'm slightly uncomfortable with this. Maybe it's going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. The other thing that is a very practical thing. I don't think this is going to work if I have to take it off every night and charge it up.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. With this one, with the Fitbit, I charge it about once a week, and basically there's a little USB cable clips into the back of it, and when I'm sitting down at the computer like I am now, I can just take it off my wrist, plug it in, and half an hour later unplug it, and I was just sitting down anyway. It's missed the fact that I've made a few keystrokes, but I'm not sure that it records those anyway. So that's not as big an issue.
But I actually think this battery life issue, it's a common problem, and it's one of these things where it bugs me that Moore's law and the other laws about technology have made we've made fantastic advances in other areas of technology, and we kind of haven't on battery life. I want the big breakthrough in battery life to happen, so that then if your smartwatch, which did all that good stuff, and I only had to plug it in and charge it once a month, that'd be cool.
Yeah, fair enough. We better move on because we're running out of time and there's still a ton of stories that we haven't touched yet. We're just having too much fun, Dave. Google, and I'm just going to tear through a couple of them quickly. Google in their I/O event talked about this thing called Android Auto, which we mentioned earlier, and basically it's a nice little way, of making the screen in your car display a subset of your phone's abilities. So it won't do everything your phone can do, and you wouldn't want it to because that'd be too distracting, but it does some of the main things like the messaging and the maps and the music and those kinds of things. And because it's basically just rebroadcasting your phone's screen onto your car's screen, it means that your car doesn't go out of date because it's just showing up whatever comes from your phone. So every time you change your phone, you're getting the new functionality displayed on your car automatically without having to buy a new car to get the new technology. Staying with transportation, and this tiny startup called Cruise is after beating Google in offering self-driving car technology to consumers. And there's a video of the story, and this is an interesting story because Google have been doing this self-driving car thing for a while now. And this company, Cruise, came almost from nowhere and came out with a version of self-driving which works in certain areas in Audi cars. The Cruise kit costs around $10,000, and they're going to sell 50 in the first run, and that's all very well. If you have an Audi, you can possibly, if you have a top, it's only in the newer Audis and not all of them, and if you can afford an Audi, you can possibly afford the extra 10 grand to have it drive itself. Sky Cars being built in Tel Aviv. I'm going to skip that one because basically we're running out of time. Salesforce getting into the health arena as well. We talked about Apple and Google getting into it. Salesforce have partnered with Philips to get into that. Which is interesting. And the last story that we're going to cover, Dave, is about Google, and I know this one interested you. And this is around the fact that Google are putting $50 million into a special program to get more girls and women into computers, basically. It's something that, to our shame, we've actually seen a fall in the number of female graduates from computer science degrees in the last number of years. So things are going the wrong direction, and this is a cool initiative out of Google to help try and reverse that. And we need more and more of that, I think, because we need to try and shore up the balance and the lack of balance in this area.
Yeah, huge fan of that. I think that's a fantastic initiative. We just haven't got enough of a balance in girls being encouraged into the STEM kind of side of education, and this kind of initiative. We have a thing over here in the UK called the Code Club, which is kind of like started by a woman called Claire Sutcliffe, and I've forgotten the name of the other woman, but you'll remind me.
Linda Sandvik.
That's right. Which is kind of volunteers teaching 9, 10, 11-year-olds how to code in schools. We need so much more of that, and we constantly need to have initiatives to get more women into the boardroom. Just a quick aside, I chair that there's a technology organisation over here called Tech UK. I chair their software as a service group. The last 3 years, I've attended the sort of annual meeting of the directors and the chairs of the group, which is about 60 people in a nice fancy event where they hand out awards and stuff. And the last 3 years, it's been the same, where there have been 5, 6, 7 women out of those 60. And since they're trying to represent the technology industry, you just have to look around the room and recognise, sorry guys, we're not representing the industry properly. What do we do to fix this? Absolutely, I think we need more stuff like that, and it's great that Google are investing some of their resources in that kind of thing. Big thumbs up.
Yeah. And another one which is great, my kids play with it, is code.org. Some fabulous resources there for teaching kids as well. So, okay.
The whole concept of teaching them to code rather than teaching them how to use Office is another subject we could spend another hour on.
Absolutely, and it's great for self-esteem. It's great for logical reasoning and thinking. It's great for all kinds of things, even if they don't become coders afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for this week. We've gone just past the hour, so no matter how many times I try and keep the show to under an hour, I keep failing. Too many good stories.
I want to talk some more. Can't you extend it by half an hour? Good stuff.
Dave, thanks a million for coming on the show.
Great stuff. You will.
Always a pleasure. And everyone else, thanks for your interest, and we shall see you same time next week. All the best, and cheery bye.